But I'm going to talk very much from the perspective of the impact that technology is making on young people's lives and what that might mean for us as educators. So before we start, I thought I'd just ask a question about, I'm not going to ask to the audience because there's too many of you and I'm scared of what you might say if I ask you that. But moderately important question. Why do we actually educate people? Now, there's lots of different answers to that question. There's lots of different answers to that question, but I'm going to pick on two. One which was encapsulated in England by a guy called Matthew Arnold in the Victorian times, who was England's second most famous Her Majesty's Inspector for Schools. Its most famous one was my old boss, Chris Woodhead, and there was a time in England when that would get a hiss across the room. And that is the role of education to pass from one generation to the next generation the best that has been thought, said, and done. The sacred duty we all have to pass from one generation the things that the other generations have learned. That is one answer to why we educate people. There's another one, which is future-facing, and I've deliberately chosen an old-fashioned view of the future because whenever you look at the future, you get it wrong, which is to say the purpose of education is to prepare people for their future lives, for what will face them when they leave our care, when we no longer are the people teaching them. And the first observation I would make is that for most of human history, those two objectives, those two aims, lined up. For most of human history, if you were a Native American in the 1400s, being told stories of your great-great-great-great-grandfather's hunting was perfect preparation for next Thursday. For most of human history, there hasn't been an issue between those two things. Passing on the best of the past was the perfect preparation for the future. It doesn't feel like that now. And one of the drivers of that is, of course, technological change, economic change, and things like that. We've now reached a point where change happens within human lifetimes. I talk about human lives bookending history. They see nations come and go in less than a human lifetime. They see technologies come and go in less than a human lifetime. Whole different ways of doing things. And because of that, education systems struggle. Because we're confident about our role passing on the best that's been thought, said, and done. We're perhaps slightly less confident about this future-facing thing for a number of reasons. I talked about continuous change. Education's big. It's huge. 1 million primary schools in China. You think about the sheer scale of education as a human endeavor. Everything's changing. I talk about new paths. I went to little school, bigger school, got a job as a teacher. Not now. You know, people finding completely new paths through this world. Childhood's changed, largely as a result of this technology, but not just because of a result of this technology. When I say to my kids, how many friends have you got? And they say 748. They're not talking about quite the same sort of thing. That's a very old picture of my eldest son. Very old picture. I use an old picture. I'm on the UK Council for Child Internet Safety. And one of the things, because I can get identified, we're very wary about is using up-to-date pictures. My son, he hates the fact I use that. My son is 15. So that's a very old picture. For those of you who can do the maths, you'll know that that means he was born in the year 2000. For those of you who know how the calendar works, you'll know that the year 2000 was the last year of the 20th century. His great-grandmother, my grandmother, died at the age of 101. So, if he inherits a bit of her genetic material, looks after himself, a few improvements in medical technology, and people sort out the issues that make men die before women, soon, please, he might have been born in the last year of the 20th century, live all the way through the 21st century, and die in the 22nd century. We perhaps need to change the strap line for the conference. The teacher that's teaching him now is touching the 22nd century. That's an astonishing thought, isn't it? I want to say some things about technology. Technology is good, technology is bad, but I don't want to talk about it because this is one of the things that's influencing this pace of change.
I have to touch you a little bit here. There's this wire is coming in.
Now, Madonna doesn't get this.
Wow.
He's rooting down the back of my trousers. I've no idea what he's hoping to find down there. One of the things that digital technology does, and this is new technologies break the traditional link between craft and product. If you look at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, you can see the work in it. There is an intimate connection between the craft of the person producing it and the product. You now listen to a piece of music and you've no idea whether it's taken months to produce, weeks to produce, seconds to produce. You've no idea. You see a digital image, you've no idea what went into producing that. One of the things this technology does is breaks that link between craft and product. Why does that matter? Because we're used to looking at pictures that kids do, a load of Brussels sprouts on sticks, and we know they're trees. Because that's how young children draw trees. We can work out the process they went through from looking at the product. You introduce technology, you cannot do that anymore. You've no idea. The other thing that, and that's profound. I mean, you think about everything, that changes everything. You have simply no idea how things are produced anymore. The other thing that all technology does, from the time that someone picked up the first stone and threw it, actually wasn't a person, it was something before that, is it extends the reach. You can flick a switch here and turn on a light there. Yeah? Human reach now reaches Titan, one of Saturn's moons. You know, direct communication with that thing. You can be in your bedroom and in Japan at the same time nowadays. Extends our reach. And the other thing that this technology does, there's two things that I think, they're not the only two things that make us human beings. One of them is language. Language is fantastic. The great thing that language allows you to do is you can learn from my mistakes because I can tell you about them. Yeah? We can build shared enterprise because we can communicate. Yeah? Language allows us to do that. The other thing that we can do uniquely is through technology, we can shape the world around us and do things differently. If a cat wants to learn to do something differently, it has to evolve into a different sort of cat. And that takes a few million years. Yeah? We can learn to do something differently through technology. And what this digital technology, it's language that can shape the world. Yeah? It's a profound idea. Two incredibly powerful human ideas come together. There's a nice, put better than me, Steve Jobs, recently deceased from Apple, said that technology is the amplifier of our intellect. That's the way I like to think about it. If you do good things, it can amplify the good things. If you do bad things, it can amplify those as well. Yeah? It extends our reach, it amplifies. For most 12-year-olds, having the technology is like them walking around with 30-meter-long arms. Yeah? They've got a huge reach, but they can knock a lot of things over at the same time. So what's happening out there in the world? And forgive me if you know about some of this stuff. How's this technology changing things in the world? And I'll leave you to think about whether you care about this and what it might mean. Let's take an example from sport. For those of you who recognise this, you'll know that Germany won the World Cup. For better or worse. That's a screen grab. That's actually from the Germany-Italy match, where they're monitoring data in real time. Okay? That's a sensor by the side of a pitch for training. The players have a sensor there, 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 one in the ball, and it tracks where they're doing it. It generates 7 million data points in a 10-minute training session, and the coach can give feedback straight away. Just think of the implications of that for sport. I have a theory that we're going to see two sorts of things happening there. So we're going to have a highly data-driven German approach to sport. I don't see the Argentinians doing it, to be honest, at the risk of stereotyping. I think they'll stick with flair and whatever, and it'll be interesting to see if they win. So there we've got it. That is instruction based on real-time data, 10 minutes of play, 7 million data points. You were leaning on your left leg a bit too much. Yeah? Whatever. Take another example, fashion. For those of you who follow fashion, everything that occurs in a sale in a fashion is a mistake that someone made. If you think about it, because they bought something they couldn't sell. Yeah? That's why we have sales, because people make mistakes. It isn't the only reason. That's one of the pieces of the software used by the fashion industry. You can see the readout there. It aggregates 53 billion data points, different buying decisions that people make to make predictions about what people will buy, what people won't buy, how much to stock, and they relate it to the weather, they relate it to a whole set of other things. Completely transformed by all of this. Tesco, the UK supermarket, has 360 million personal profiles. Yeah? They know, are you risk averse? Do you always eat the same thing? Do you go to church on a Sunday? Do you have children? If you have children, do you eat with your children, or do you eat separately from the children? They can predict where you go on holiday. They can predict which way you'll vote. And if you are female and around the age of 30 and you stop buying Pinot Grigio and tampons, they know you're pregnant. Fascinating stuff. 360 million personal profiles. Anybody who's ever bought anything online using a credit card with any of the things, this is what they're doing, for better or worse. It is driving lots of the economy. And I just shared this statistic. We're not about employment here today, but I thought I'd do say a little bit about it. 90% of the jobs across Europe now need digital skills. 90%. You know, just to put all this in context. Matters to young people as well. That's a self-portrait that a friend of mine's daughter did as part of her exam work for her art. Yeah, so that's her. I don't know if you can recognize all the computer cables that she's done for her hair. And it's funny, sometimes you get reminded about how old you are. Because I said, is this you with all the information coming into you, information overload? She said, no, it flows the other way. This is her extending her reach and touching the world. You know, so it matters to young people. If you look at how education's evolved, and this is a little bit of a UK perspective, but it is shared by a lot. Original learning generation, the book generation, driven primarily by agriculture. We have summer holidays in England so that people can get the crops in. I live in a city with 15 million people. You know, you struggle to grow a sprout, as I know. You know, but we have a set of things that are built around the agricultural year, and people are statutorily by law required to turn up. That's some of the younger teachers. You know, they've grown up with technology, but technology is still a challenge to them. I'm going to flick onto this. For younger children, so I've talked about my 15-year-old. If I talk about my 11-year-old when he was 3, we have an office at home because I do a lot of work from home. I came home to hear him banging away in the office. I thought, oh, He was 3. He'd turned the computer on, he'd been online, he'd gone to a Ben 10 site and was playing a computer game. And he'd done all that without being shown how to do it. This stuff has always existed. As far as he's concerned, it's no different from trees and volcanoes. You know, just stuff that's always been in the environment. A challenge for us in schools, we did a survey. So this is a long time ago. We looked at, I've actually got these the wrong way around, so I'll stick with it this way around. This was Mori, which is a survey thing that surveyed 2,417 kids and asked them, how do you like learning? And that's what they said. We like learning in groups, doing practical things with our friends. We like using computers. We actually like to be alone sometimes. That's what they said. We then asked them, well, we didn't, Mori, the survey poll did, and how do you actually find yourself learning? Now, let's remember kids lie. You know? That's perhaps a bit harsh, but they don't always remember things right. So don't, but it is an interesting thing, because when they were asked about how they said, 52% said, well, the major thing we do is copy from a board or a book. Yeah? Listening to the teacher talking for a long time was the thing they said second. Not quite the same as the way they like doing things, you know? Really interesting thing. If we were a commercial business, that would mean we'd have a catastrophic disconnect between ourselves and our customers. Even if they're wrong, that signals a catastrophic disconnect. They just like doing things differently. I like the fact that alone is up there as well. I like that. I like the fact that they say it isn't all about being with your friends, whatever. Sometimes it is good to be on your own. But in groups, practical things, with friends, computers, alone. And teachers, they're good, you know? Yeah. Teachers matter. I've used these slides in every talk I've done since 1998. So I'm going to talk a little bit about models of learning. And sometimes there's a big show on at the moment in London, which is the Digital Technology Education Show. And it really annoys me because it talks about a model of learning like that, as if learning can be posted into someone like that, as if they could just sit there passively. And they talk about learning through the desktop or nonsense like that, you know? As if personalized learning was just getting the right shaped pipe to connect to a kid to pump the stuff in. Learning isn't like that. You don't learn by consuming anything, I don't think. You learn by producing things. Learning grows inside the young person, and the way it grows is by them producing things. And if you take nothing away from anything I'd say, I give this as something to think about. The most powerful way of seeing if someone understands something and getting them to understand something is to get them to make you one. You want to see if they understand music? Get them to make some. You want to see if they understand film? Get them to make one. You want to see if they understand the solar system? Get them to make one. Maybe not a real one. That's a bit challenging. But there are places you can go and you can construct. There are places you can go, you can build a mammal and put it in a cold environment and see what happens. You learn by making something. And the fantastic thing about making something is the stuff that's in here comes out here, yeah? And we can all look at it, and we can talk about it. So when someone constructs something, so when someone makes something, it makes learning visible. Is this making any sense at all? Because I can talk to them about the thing they've made, and they can talk to the thing about me. And what technology does, when used well, is gives kids powerful tools for making, not consuming. So I look at things like Khan Academy. I'm not against Khan Academy, but it's all about kids consuming stuff. It's a pipe to get maths lectures to them. I'm far more interested in this. I need to point out at this point that I'm not looking at my watch. So, yeah. So what might, if you believe me about the way that technology, not just technology, the world's changing, and we might need a new set of skills. Perhaps I'm exaggerating slightly when I talk about the 22nd century, but we need a new set of skills to address that. What might they be? Now, I'm going to talk specifically about technology here, but perhaps in a different way than most people talk about technology, with something I stole from a guy, a professor of education at Leeds. The idea is about capable young people, and let's talk about what that means in technology terms. Capable people are aware. They can see things around them. I said earlier on that for my kids, they've grown up, they're not aware. Technology's always existed, a whole set of things have always existed. They don't recognize it. They use it without recognizing it. Raising awareness, so just being aware of how the world is changing and how it's being shaped, one aspect of capability. Being able to use whatever the tools of the day are, I think, is an important part of capability. The tools of the day, if you go back to the printing press, were used by a tiny proportion. The pen, for most of human history, was used by a tiny proportion. These tools are in everybody's hands. He's following me around. It's making. I'm obsessive about making. That we have a thing in the UK called the maker movement, largely through technology. But the idea of people making things, and that's why I like the cooking evaluating. Evaluation skills. You'll have seen websites like this. I like this one, though. I'll read a little bit from it because the writing's a bit small. Christopher Columbus was born in 1951 in Sydney, Australia. His home was on the sea, and Christopher longed to become an explorer. It goes on like that. It is, of course, complete nonsense. And people have put it up deliberately as an education thing to get people thinking critically about what they find when they go on the internet and not to believe everything. There's a great site about dihydroxide. Any chemists in here? About the number of people each year who die from ingesting dihydroxide and the amount of damage it can do. Overexposure to dihydroxide is a significant cause of death. Children die each year from dihydroxide. Anybody know what dihydroxide is? Water, H2O. And again, it's a fantastic website because it's done like a campaigning, sign the petition here, we must ban dihydroxide. You need to be able to evaluate the sources and the stuff around you, an important 21st century skills. And the last set of skills David Layton talked about, he calls about them holistic skills, realizing that the way the world works shapes the way you think about the world. So, my nephew, I remember having this conversation with my nephew a long time ago. My nephew's white working class northern kid from England, which means the music he likes goes. It's about 160 beats per minute and it is relentless. I play him a piece of music I like and he says, it's sloppy. It's out of time. It doesn't lock. Reason is it's got a human being playing the drums. The way he listens to music has been shaped by the technology of the day. A 21st century skills, just recognizing that you're not always right. The way you think about the world is shaped by the things in the world around you. So if that's what capability is, and I'm going to finish on this bit, you see this is can you tell that that's old? Just by looking at it, you can tell that that's an old diagram, can't you? It's from the 1980s. Two people I used to work with, one's called Paul Black, who was at King's University, and one's Geoffrey Harrison, who's at Nottingham Trent University. It's a technology model, but it actually applies to whole sets of different curriculum design. If you believe me, that this is all about capable young people, able to make their way in the world. And if you hang on to what I said about the two objectives of the education, I do care about the best of the past being passed on. You know? I want my 15-year-old to find out about Shakespeare. I do. You know? I don't think no one's got to apologise for that. Perhaps I'd like him to find out about it in a different way than it's currently done. But I do care about that. What the model suggests is that capable people, this is so idiot simple, by the way, so idiot simple, but it is really, really illuminating, have a set, and they're on the left-hand side, of intellectual resources, stuff that you can call down. Cognitive scientists give it a special name, but stuff that's just in here. Things you know, yeah? Things you know. Resources. Knowledge, concepts, skills, being able to cut a piece of wood, being able to chop a tomato, whatever. Yeah? Techniques, a set of things that are resources. And what the Black-Harrison model talks about is how through meaningful, productive inquiry tasks, which is the bit in the center, you use that and develop that. You use these resources to develop the capability. That was all very, very abstract. Let me go concrete on that. If all you've got is these resources, you'll be fantastic on a quiz show. Yeah? Because you'll know a lot of stuff. Yeah? But you won't necessarily be able to use to do it. The stuff in the middle, without the stuff on the left, without the underpinning knowledge, resources, or whatever, we have a phrase in England called a pub argument. That's an argument in a bar. A pub argument, I do lots of them. They're brilliantly executed processes, uninformed by any underpinning knowledge, fact, or whatever kind of thing. Actually, teachers are very good at them. Most teachers can know 2 facts about Brazil and do an hour on it. Yeah? Yeah? Can. It's what you have to do, kind of thing. The idea is that by using this, by using the knowledge and the skills in meaningful, productive, inquiry-driven tasks, you develop 3 things. One is it secures the knowledge, yeah, because you've actually used it to do something. Or you've learned the knowledge in a context that was meaningful. 2, you've developed some skills along the way. And thirdly, you've developed capability, which is the ability to draw on these things when you're facing a new challenge. Yeah? And it's an interesting model. So knowing the date of the Battle of the Hastings goes in there. Constructing a historical argument goes there. Being able to transfer that to something different, a different aspect of history or your life, is the capability. Is this making any sense at all as a way of thinking about it? So when I go into schools, what I like to see is a curriculum that does do some of this. I can always recognize schools where the teacher hasn't done some of that or doesn't do some of that by the groove they're wearing in the floor as they run around to support the individual children. Yeah? Because the children are in some incredibly exciting, open-ended, productive task, but haven't got the scaffolding to actually do it. Yeah? I can always recognize when people are doing this without this by the look of utter boredom on the face of the young people there, because all they're doing is capturing stuff. I think I'm going to finish there. It's an interesting model, this. For those of you, I like jazz. I can just about admit to that in a public place. If you look at some great jazz improviser like Charlie Parker, who was a saxophone player, in his repertoire, he had over 300 phrases that he knew in every key. Yeah? What he could do, which gave him the capability, is not just know them, not just be able to play them, but in the moment, draw on them within the process of improvising. Yeah? And that's what made him capable And that's what differentiated him between people who just know a lot and wave their fingers about, if that makes sense. I'll finish there, I think. Thank you very much for listening. I am at the end, aren't I? Thank you very much for bearing with me speaking English. I find it astonishing that you can do this. Most people in England don't speak second languages and actually aren't that great at their first. I'm talking about myself here. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you find some of that interesting. I'm not trying to be helpful, by the way. I'm just trying to encourage you to think about some different sorts of things. I am niel.mclean0@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter, or you can whatever, if you want to carry on the conversation. But otherwise, have a great day and enjoy the seminar and everything like that. And thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your inspiring teach. We're going to take a coffee break until 10:45.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
You're still here, so when people want to ask you questions,
They can come and say hello and whatever. Yeah, thank you.